Today we are going to study one of the article written by Keshav, Goyal, and he is studying in Atmaram Sanatan College, Delhi University. Atmaram Sanatan Dharm College, ARSD College, Delhi University, which is located at Dhula Kuma. And this article published in International Journal of English Language, Education and Literature Studies. And let's start. This is about the women representation in Srilal Shukla's Raag Darbar. So let's start. She is presented off stage, absent in mainstream, unheard voices of women in Srilal Shukla's Raag Darbar. Abstract. This work seeks to constitute the unexplored area in Srilal Shukla's Raag Darbari, which is the lack of representation and absent female voices in the novel. By looking at the liminality of their participation in the larger rubric of politics, education and economic, etc., the research examines the subjectivity and positioning of women, which is in contrast to the delineations of the male voices in the novel. The work diverges from the current reading of the text, which focuses on the satirical aspect of the novel. The paper accentuates on the autonomy of women and their indulgence in the role play of the novel by locating them within the corpus of Anchalic literature. The paper is doing a textual analysis by aid of feminist reading of the novel. The task is accomplished keeping in the mind the feminist mystique theory of Betty Friedan and Patricia Collins and Dorothy Smith's feminist standpoint theory. The main finding of the research demonstrate the urgency of issue where feminine ideals of women are completely out of the picture. The larger concern of this paper not only focuses on the objectivity of the women but also their subjectivity. As a result, the research shifts the lens of looking at it from satirical framework to inherent gender struggle in the narrative. Introduction. Raag Darbari, since its publication in 1968, has achieved such immense international repute that it has made Srilal Shukla the recipient of Sahitya Akademi Award within a year. The excellence of the work lies in its exposure of village or provincial ideals, which are artistically linked with the political economy and education of the larger framework. The story of an urban man, Ranganath, who gets entangled with his ill health and takes vicinity of rural life to rejuvenate him, but in the end he becomes a misfit. A similar instance is analogous to the Phanishwarnath's and Renu's Maila Achal, where doctor comes to Maryganj for some work and wants to rejuvenate his soul in this Anchalic rural setup. Anchalic here means the rustic land which is considered as Anchal or motherland for the villages. The critical intervention of the work lies mainly in Gillian Wright's commentary, where she points out the absolute foppishness of the village ideals and its relation to corporate life. Yoshita Singh takes forward the Wright's argument and point out the impact of corporate ills of Shopalganj, which is still relevant in 21st century. This serves as a new line of inquiry for some critics who point out by highlighting the need of real and represented in the novel. But Anjaria's observation is constricted to male and their masochistic power in the village. The commentaries and reviews of this novel are still mired in the webs of male and their totalitarian regime. The issue of female voices and their subjectivity in the novel is completely isolated from the whole reading. The dynamics of domestic life and its functioning have made the situation of the women deplorable. While one tries to locate the persona women in the novel, one gets a rare example, and that too from the superficial reference which becomes the only entry and exit point of their allocation in the functioning of the novel. Point number 2, a rational and research question. Women's position from the period of Vedas till now has been completely altered. The role of women in the modern era deteriorated to complete state of dependency on patriarchy. They are made subject to witness the inequality not only in public sphere but also within their family. New reforms and resolutions are made every year for the protection and encouragement of the women. But how much of it really goes to every part of the society? Stuck in a few corrupted hands, the provisions of the benefits are way behind in reaching their destinations. Issuing this realistic approach towards life, Raag Darbari is set in the age of post-independence era of 1968 under the Indira Gandhi regime. The era is already reshaping its structure and giving autonomy to the female voices. If we look a few years back, we have a foreshadowing of these voices through Bimla of Tagore's Home and the World. Considering other novels of Shilal Shukla, Raag Virag, the protagonist Sukanya is the female voice narrating the tale. Even in the other novels like Agyatwas, we find many female characters whose presence become a pivotal instance for the novel's subjective formation. Then the question arises, why in Raag Darbari the situation is completely opposite? Point number 3, roadmap of the paper. The first section of this paper focuses on the corporeal presence and agency of women in novel. Further on, the paper substantiates the argument by locating it with marriage and education and politics of Shivpalganj. The female point of inquiry would be at look at women's positioning and underplay throughout the novel by aid of feminist critical studies. This done by looking at other texts of Shilal Shukla such as Agyatwas, Suni Ghatika Suraj, etc. and other writers of the age have depicted female voices in their novel. 3.1 Nomenclature and lack of corporal presence. Someone's presence and absence on the stage is highlighted by the dialogue in the drama. So we are going to study point number 3.2, issue of marriage. Issue of marriage. The character who has been given a little importance is Bela. She becomes a misanthrope in the novel, one who changes the politics and status of those in power. But she is entangled in tendrils of society, as her name suggested. She is not privileged like Ashk Bela of Sukhi Dali, who has little bit of autonomy in at the end. The Bela of Raag Darbari is withered branch of Shivpalganj. She can't be heard throughout the novel if she has been intentionally made mute. The chance of Bela's assertion becomes negligible as if her persona is created from the beginning of the novel as a meek, submissive woman. The later incident in the novel corrupts her presence, leading to the ultimate epiphany that she is being regarded by Chote wrestler as woman of low character. Bela is forcefully married to some guy of her own Vaishya community, and her father ruptures her free will in the decision making regarding her own life. The same situation of women are being married because of their familial pressures can be seen in the characters like Satya in Suni Ghatika Suraj and Dr. Sita in Agyatwas. As sections from family and society becomes the code of conduct for these women, and thus their individual choices are pushed to the point of their transformation. The unhappy married life and post-marriage scenario of women can be seen in the diurnal case of dowry and physical assault. Elizabeth Bumiller's depiction of failed marriage of Indian wives make us ponder over the whole debate about the functioning of Indian society, where father's dignity becomes ultimate verdict for the daughter. The important shift of marriage in Raag Darbari tends its way to the functioning of Vediji, who actually pretends to be democratic to disguise his political motive, arrange intercaste marriage someone who has to take step forward. Point number 3.3, education of women in novel. The great point of inquiry in the field of women's education in Shivpalganj can be witnessed by looking at the functioning of college on gender basis. In Changamal Intermediate College, one cannot locate even a single female student. Changamal Intermediate College is equivalent to Dr. Pagan Academy in Evelyn's Wood's Decline and Fall, where everything is gothic and gloomy. The only reference of inclusion of women is of Mahadevi's poetry. The disequilibrium of the male-female ratio in the college draws our attention to illiteracy of women. This is not a new point of argument, but what is important here is that the fact that Shilal Shukla in his own other nobles has given agency to the other woman. If Chand in Simai Tutti Hai can pursue her thesis work, Sita in Suni Ghati Ka Suraj can become a doctor, Ruby in Admi Ka Zahar can become a teacher, why the women of Shivpalganj can't pursue the path to education? The necessity of education in the rural setup of Shivpalganj becomes the poignant point of inquiry. Savitribai Phule's reformation of women's education is a century ago, when the novel was published, did create a major impact on the society. But many villages like Shivpalganj were completely unexposed to such reforms. The other proposition prevails in the minds of people is how education of women becomes curse for society and for her family, which she can be seen in representation of Rebati in Fakir Mohan Senapati's story. Bela was taught a little to read the scriptures, but when the plot of the love letter was discovered, some considered that it was she who devised the plan. They called her hag or enchanters who put her spell on everyone. The statement reflects on the fact that if a woman dare to get herself educated, she will be the cause of doom for the society. Atia Hussein's Sunlight on a Broken Column points the same debate about women's education, where Layla's education was always considered as the reason for her vague imagination, and Zara was always considered sane because she reads limited stuff which is related to religion. Shivpalganj is still under the veil of ignorance and superstition. Villagers believe in the authority of the Raja, Vediji, and everyone's life is directly and indirectly controlled by him. In such a state, questioning the authority would be a futile attempt on their part. 3.4 Women's relation to politics of village. When we look at the role of women in politics of village, such as the events when election of the new village head was held, Vediji was elected unanimously and senator becomes the village head because he was ardent devotee of Vediji. Gillian writes, politics in the novel is male dominated despite Indira Gandhi having been the prime minister for so long. But Wright does not take this observation forward. Shukla remarks to Wright's inquiry hold a major question. I do not think a lady would have behaved like Vediji. Most of the Dickensian heroines, specifically Rachel in Hard Times and others, expected the behavior of women to be an angel in the house. Since most mid-19th century, political reforms for women's equality has started shaping up. But until the 1950s, women were not given political and legal rights. Women in Shivpalganj were caught under the responsibilities of housekeeping and childbearing. They are not allowed to demand their rights. Instead, they have become stoic because of their present situation. The men, on the other hand, have rights of discussing whom they wanted as their head of the village. They cannot be like Shanti of Bankim's Anand Bhatt, who joins the rebel group and fights for the nation's cause. Indeed, they are similar to Bankim's portrayal of Hemangini in Raj Mohan's wife, who was depicted as an ideal homemaker. 3.5 Critical theories to substantiate position of women. The possibility of women within the male domain thus becomes the center of inquiry for critics. Male-female inequality in every sphere of society and power of one gender over the other problematizes the situation and makes us wonder about the way in which these issues can be addressed. Pointing out Betty Friedan's idea of feminist mystique, which points out the agony of Friedan's when she, after giving birth to her second child, was not allowed to work. Therefore, she tries to interview females and put herself in the shoes of others, like how other women feel after they lost their sense of entitlement. The mystique of society, in which only possible way of women is to fill the need by satisfying it through household, marriage or child rearing, etc. In the novel, this example aptly retains its place, starting from the pickle filling duty of women to marriage of Bela. The whole notion of women's surrender to the patriarchal power can be discerned. This mystique work out as an impediment. It punctures the growth of women's life Bela and make them vulnerable to suffer the angst of eternal domesticity. The collaborative feminist standpoint theory of Patricia Collins and Dorothy Smith was put forward with the point that inequality between male and female disturbs the production of the knowledge in the society. The standpoint of women is not only dependent on the knowledge of the society but also the knowledge of their own self. This introduces a whole turnaround of looking at women in different light through the lens of marginal violence. The argument in a way minimizes the myopic vision of the society. This theory in a way tries to restore the standpoint of Bela and other women in Shivpalganj who were pushed down to periphery of the society. The standpoint of a woman rectifies one's vision and in a way tries to shift the situation of women from the edge to the center of narrative. Conclusion. Referring to all points above, one thing can be clearly justified. It is very easy to locate the absence of the women not only on the physical level but also on the mental, societal, economical, political level as well. Their presence in the narrative is evoked after through the malicious, lustful voices of the male, which delimits their identity to someone's object to be exhibited in the market. The portrayal of women in Raag Darbari clearly separates from them from Shukla's other novels. The serenity of the provincial countryside of the Shivpalganj does attempt the reader to experience the bliss, the state of utmost bliss one can ponder over through the words within another romantic writer's poem. It gives them tranquility, happiness, and the way to lead life ahead. But here, this bliss in Raag Darbar is like an onion, which after unraveling each layer gives nothing concrete about the woman's position. I, in the novel, becomes the third person, they, and further paves the way for nothing significance. In the end, this paper limits itself to the major issues of liminality in the indulgence of active role play by women and their positioning in the society. The other possible area which can intrigue the reader, like revisiting the novel, could be the metaphorical combination of nature and women. Symbol of Raag Darbari, its tune throughout the novel could also be one of the possible areas of interest. However, for the present time, this work attempts to throw light on the dichotomy between visible ignorance of the body and voice of women in the novel. So this is a wonderful article, and now these references you can see and you can quote for your answers also, and go through it, search it on the internet, and you will find, and it's a proud moment for us that one of our student, Keshav, he has written such a wonderful article, and I'm very happy to read this article before you. Thank you so much. Please subscribe the channel, like and share. Thank you so much. God bless you.